everyone, and welcome to the webinar, an overview of Google Data Studio. I'm Dave Ekman, Chief Technology Officer at Cardinal Path, and I'll be moderating today's session. We will have time for questions towards the end of the presentation, but throughout this presentation, you can feel free to submit through the question panel on your screen. We're also recording today's session, so everyone who registered will receive a link to the recording after the webinar. We're going to kick things off with a quick poll to better understand where we're all at in terms of dashboard adoption. If you can please just select the one or ones that best fit your current state. This just really helps us understand, are you currently actively using dashboards and reporting within your organization to make decisions and to drive analysis and insights? Maybe you actually have some set up, but they tend to be emailed out and nobody really looks at them, or you don't really have anything in place at the moment. While we await for the results to come in, I'm going to introduce today's speakers. I'm joined today by my colleague Mary Andrews, Director of Digital Intelligence with Cardinal Path. Mary leads visualization efforts for a lot of our clients and knows what it takes to bring data to life through dashboards. Mary, welcome to the webinar today.
Thanks, Dave.
And we're really excited to have none other than Nick Mihailovski, Google's lead product manager for Data Studio. If you're already a Data Studio fan or have been using Google Analytics for a long time, you'll probably know Nick, as he's been at Google since the acquisition of Urchin, the precursor to Google Analytics. At Google, Nick leads a team of product managers who are focused on building data integrations, machine learning, interactive visualization, and mobile experiences. Nick will walk us through key features of Data Studio today, talk about what's new, and even take us through a live demo of the tool. Nick, welcome, and thanks for taking the time to help us deliver this Data Studio overview. It's really great to have you on the line today.
Great, thanks for having me.
So Melissa, have the results come in yet? Yeah, it looks like the results have come in. There's an interesting split here where we do see that there are quite a number of folks using dashboards to help drive some of their deeper analysis and insights that they might be doing. So that's really great to hear. And then a pretty even split across the board with some of the rest. So it gives us a little starting point there, and looks like quite a number of you have experience already with dashboards within your organization. Mary, I'm going to pass it over to you to take it away.
Thanks, Dave. Okay, let's dive right in you see the agenda here, and we'll talk about a little bit about dashboards, a case study, why Data Studio, demo, and then talking about success beyond. So I want to jump right in. Good Forrester quote here, 97% of analytics and marketing professionals still use spreadsheets to produce analysis and measurement outcomes. And I have to say, as an analyst at my core, I'm going to continue to use spreadsheets. Pulling and culling data in a program like Excel is something that helps me generate deep insights, but in the fast-paced digital marketing world, the spreadsheet-based approach is not really going to cut it. We need to have fast, actionable insights that we can turn around, especially to our marketing teams, focused on those core KPIs. Spreadsheets often lack the data points. It's just data points that might lack context and the takeaways that will persuade and drive action. So in these ways, we find that dashboards provide a fast, seamless, consistent way for us to share our data and our information across our organizations. And given that it looks like from spend surveys, up to throughout 2017, 12% of company revenue looks like it's going to be spent on marketing budgets. It's an even more compelling reason for us to get real-time visibility into our marketing performance and streamline and accelerate that reporting process. In this way, dashboards are a key tool in our toolbox, and we want to make sure we have those actionable insights at the fingertips of our marketers daily if we can. To that end, Forrester has another good quote. Dashboards act as a catalyst to change perspectives of marketing performance and help allocate future marketing spend. So for all these reasons, we can't underscore enough that dashboards are a core tool for today's marketing environment. talk a little bit about the value of dashboards and the proposition here. But before we talk about this, first step back, what a dashboard is not. It's not an analysis per se. It tells you what is going on with your data, but not often the how or why, but it tees us up to do those deeper analysis by starting with one source of data truth. So a solid value underpinning of a good dashboard is that it's pulling data from one place. There's nothing worse than two teams within an organization get two different reports saying two different things based on data sets that should be similar or aligned. And we know that once we lose that trust in the data, the organization might not even look at the dashboards again or look at the data sets, and then we lose that kind of data is the core underpinning for us to be able to do these optimizations, and we want people to engage with the data. So core value set one is making sure dashboards are all pulling from one source of data truth, and we can operationalize that. So it takes a lot of that manual effort and potential data issues out of the equation right away. Two, it brings your data to life with beautiful visualizations, and some of the case study examples we'll show today are a great example. And the more that marketers, and I myself fall into this trap, if it looks great, I'm drawn to it, I want to know more. So that visual aspect really engages our teams and gets them really bought into using the dashboards and not just leaving them languishing in an inbox somewhere. Leading to, I think once people start engaging and actually using them, they start to collaborate, they can start to share. And that's another key pillar of a useful dashboard is that contribution across teams and sharing, which to me leads to the fourth key pillar, which is driving questions that can really uncover deep insights. So to say, like, we're collaborating on a project, we see this dashboard that's telling us something interesting, how can we learn more? So it gets people engaged with asking questions about the data, and therefore, again, driving more insights, driving more actionability across your organization. So with these four pillars kind of coming together to form the backbone of the data value proposition or dashboard value proposition, I want to talk a little bit about Data Studio. So as you can see here, Data Studio, it's one of the 7 products in the Analytics 360 suite. This webinar is one of a series. It's covering all these products, but today we're focused on Data Studio. It sits on top of the entire suite. It acts as a visualization engine for all the great data being generated. And why I use it a little bit, like this could get a little personal, but I think Data Studio, not only is the ease of use, I just love being able to jump in, grab data, start a chart, and I think that lower barrier really is going to encourage your teams to start interacting with the data more. The drag and drop is, which we'll get into with the demo with Nick in a few minutes here, you'll see that seamless ability to pull your data in a snap, integrating with different types of data, and you'll see especially not only can we pull in GA data based on the product suite we just saw on the prior slide, but there's many ways to pull in data from other sources. Say your marketers have a spreadsheet sitting somewhere, well, pop it in a G Sheet, we'll connect it right to Data Studio. So it's a great way to pull data in from various places. And the design, again, can't be beat. Has some of the most beautiful options for presenting data that I've seen as a tool on the market today. So for these reasons, Data Studio is a core tool we use across many of our client engagements. And with that, I wanted to talk about BRP, Bombardier Recreational Products, who are using, as you can see here, a screenshot example of the beauty of the dashboards that they've created for their marketing teams. So we're talking about multiple brands doing, having all the same dashboard options available, coming from a similar back end, but being able to elevate these reports up to C-suites. And then it's constantly evolving, creating new dashboards for different, as people start to see these and engage, you can't imagine the amount of collaboration we see with different members asking for more data. I want to see this. How about that? Like, you really get people engaged when you present them something as beautiful as this. A couple examples of some of the reports created. What's cool here is a cockpit level view. You know, your C levels may just be keyed in on your core KPIs shown here. What's amazing about Data Studio is the presentation of this data, but the back end that actually feeds this, we're talking about current data, last year's data, and planned data all together in one view. So this is powered by BigQuery, and again, pulling in data sources from multiple places to be able to put so many key metrics on one visual. And again, at a glance, you can see what's happening today against what's planned and what happened last year. Very valuable to the various teams. Additionally, the fact that you can check out the whole regional around the world, all the data together, or break it down by whatever region or country is important to you. Another way I like to use Data Studio is to plug directly into Google Analytics. And I know within Google Analytics you can pull up, you know, a channel or medium report directly, but having all this side by side on one visual, very powerful for marketing teams. And again, be able to customize the look and feel of this, you know, customize the colors, customize it for your brand palette. Again, very powerful. What I also like about Data Studio is the fact that, again, it's not just GA-centric. You know, if you want to know what's happening in the social space and Facebook is important to you, we're able to pull that data in, again, make a BigQuery table that surfaces all your important Facebook metrics. And YouTube actually is a direct connection to Data Studio. So in one view, we have side-by-side two reports that, again, if you were to try to cull this in Excel and create a spreadsheet and then try to create this kind of visualization, it's going to take some manual effort here. Everything's plugged in, updates in real time, and side by side, you have your social networks. So with that, I want to hand it over to Nick to go into a bit of our Data Studio demo.
Great, thanks.
No problem.
So if you could jump to the next slide, please. So what I wanted to talk a little bit about is some of the vision and driving factors of why we actually created Google Data Studio. You know, at Google, it's unique because we get to work with many different customers across many different businesses and industries. And at Google, we actually generate lots of data. So we get a lot of data points on how people work with data. And what's fascinating is when we talk to all these different users, they all go through some sort of a common workflow as they're working with data, where they need to be able to access data, collect it, they need to be able to prepare it in some way, analyze it to get some insights, share those or curate those insights for stakeholders, and then being able to share them. And what we found is that today, as you're going across these stages, you're typically using some sort of tools, and limitations in any of the tools at any of the stages causes you to leave the tool you're using and go and use a different tool. Go to the next slide, please. And so when we started talking to customers about all the different, you know, tools that they're using to get to their workflow, it's amazing. Many people use many different tools. Like think about the process that you have to maybe pull together to put a report for your stakeholders or your customers or your partners, right? You have to go and get the data. Maybe it's in a database, maybe it's in analytics, maybe it's in Facebook or YouTube like we saw earlier. You have to get the data out and somehow get the data into a format in the right date range so that you can compare it properly. So you're doing that in Excel, maybe you're using SQL, maybe you learn how to do SQL, or you're learning how to use SQL to manipulate the data in a way you want to do it. Then you might want to look at some of the insights, right? How do you visualize the data? How do you explore it? How do you answer some questions that you think the stakeholders are going to ask, so that way you can answer them? So you're using a tool. There's many tools on the market today. But what we generally find is when you start to communicate those insights, you're usually pulling that stuff into a PowerPoint or Google Slides or some sort of other medium by which you communicate. And then those are getting emailed out to the stakeholders, right? And there's so many different stages along that way, so many different tools. Now, how many times have you shared your report with the stakeholders and they've asked, oh, well, what if we looked at this differently? Or can you add this other data? You have to actually go through this whole process again, which is super time consuming. The other use case that we hear a lot is after you've gone through this monthly, maybe you're doing it on a cadence of a month, the executives love the report and say, this is fantastic. Can we get it on a weekly basis or on a daily basis? And because there's just so much friction, it actually becomes really time-consuming and very difficult to do this on a regular basis. So what we find is that it's not necessarily the functionality that doesn't exist, but rather the convenience and ease of use that make it very difficult for people to actually go through this workflow regularly. And it's very difficult for many people in an organization to actually work with data and answer questions because they just don't have the time or the skill sets, or they haven't had the training to use all these different tools to be effective with the data. Next slide, please. So the vision here with Data Studio is how do we actually make it easier for people to go through this workflow? And we have a couple different tools within Data Studio. One of them is a tool to make it easy to access data. We can connect to data, import data, transform data. We have a tool around making it easy to explore data, answer questions, make it really easy to query the data. And then we have a built-in experience around making it easy to communicate the data to stakeholders, share with them. That's all integrated. We'll show in the demo. And the whole idea here is by making it easier for users to go through this flow, we can start empowering users who traditionally don't have the time or resources to use the tools on the market today and enable them to make better business decisions. And if you think about it, like how are decisions made in an organization today? Generally, you'll have an embedded analytics team who do have the resources and time to make decisions, and they become the centralized analytics team for which everybody in an organization goes to gain some insights. And so our vision is how do we actually empower everybody in an organization to have the tools available so that they all can make better business decisions, and it's not bottlenecked and centralized, but rather democratizing this ability to make these decisions. So that's a high-level overview of the product. What I want to do now is just jump right in and show you a demo of how it works. So I'm going to go, hopefully you can see my screen, yes?
Yep, so we've got your screen, Nick.
Perfect. So anybody can follow along. We made the product completely free. We started with calling it Data Studio 360, then we offered a free version, and then we decided to make the whole product free. So anybody can follow along. You can go to datastudio.google.com and you can follow along. So what I'm going to do is show you, take you through the product by creating a brand new report. I'm going to go ahead and click on blank here. Okay. The first thing I need to do is add data to the report. So I'm going to click this create new data source. So we have a bunch of connectors to different types of data, and we're continuously adding more and more. At Google, we have a lot of popular products, so we've added connectors directly to those products. We know a lot of data lives outside of Google, in on-premise data, so we have connectors to MySQL and Postgres, different databases. We also have generic connectors like Sheets and BigQuery, which allows people to have data maybe that we don't have a connector. They can go through these other mechanisms and get data into their product. Finally, recently we launched the ability to upload files. So we have 2 gigabytes of storage that you can add files and append data to do it. So for this demo, I'm just going to go ahead and click on Analytics, Google Analytics. And I'll go ahead and connect here. And I get a bunch of data default, so I'm just going to go ahead and use this data and add it to the report. Okay, so I've added my Google Analytics data to report. It's that easy. And now I'm going to start building a report. So we really try to design this to look like an application product. And to start visualizing data, I can go into this toolbar, I can click time series, and I could just go ahead and drag and drop the visualization directly on the canvas. And what we really wanted to do here is empower users to build the experience around their data exactly the way they wanted to do it. So I visualized this time series and notice that we understand the concept of date, we understand some of the default data that's available in Google Analytics that we've connected to, and just like that, we're visualizing data. Now, there's a bunch of different charts, and I could go ahead and switch this to a chart. So I can go to a bar chart. I could see it. We have combo charts. We have pie charts. And notice that we're updating the data to give a good representation of how it should look. To make it really easy to play around with the different data. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and just create a little report. I'm going to Control-C, Control-V. I'm going to copy and paste this. I'll bring this down here. Why don't we make that into a map? I'll Control-C, Control-V. Why don't I come over here and make this into a pie chart? And I'll go ahead and add a little text box here. Example report. And let's just make this a little bit bigger, like a title. Great. These look a little bit low, so why don't I go ahead and bring them up here. And now I can go into this view experience, and just like that, I've created reports in under a minute that's starting to visualize my data, right? Very simple. And so we've added a lot of customization capabilities to the product as well. So for all the data I have access to that I'm connecting to, I could come in and configure anything. So here I'm looking at sessions. Here we have like all the data we have in Google Analytics. So if I wanted to look at, for example, users, I want to potentially do a user-centric report, I can go ahead and add users. If I wanted to add another metric of maybe percent new sessions, which is new users, I could go ahead and add that as well. Now that's going to actually, percentage is going to be on a different scale, so I have a bunch of different style options where I can actually put the second series here on the right side to get the right percentage. So just like that, I can start playing with the data. We make it really easy to customize these things. And one of the things that we wanted to do is make it really easy for people to make these reports interactive, right? Sometimes you'll create a static report and you'll share it, and then your stakeholders will start asking questions. Well, instead of having them come back to you and then you updating the report, we want to make these reports interactive so they can start answering their own questions. So the first thing we have is the ability to add a date range here. So I can go ahead and add a date range. I can go ahead and set this to any sort of default. So we can say last 28 days and apply it. And then when I go into this view experience, I have this little control that I could click on, and then now any of my viewers can now interact with it and notice how everything's updating here on the fly, right? Really easy way to make these reports interactive for data that's trending over time. The other thing we have is the ability to add more dynamic interactive filters. So let me just move this over here, and I'll go ahead and add what we call our filter control. So the filter control, there's a couple ways you can visualize it. There's a drop down, but I like expanding this out here. And so here I have medium. I can actually configure this to have any of the dimensions in Google Analytics. So for example, let's say I want to look at the default channel grouping. Great. I could just add it on here. And so now when I view, I have this control here. And so if I wanted to now look at the total number of users and percentage of new sessions for my social campaigns, I could go ahead, click on that, and everything now updates, right? If I want to now look at email, I can go ahead and do so and start exploring about how my emails campaigns are trending over time. We find this really useful because as you start exploring, when you look at the total, you see one story, but when you start trending out the details, you start to see that sometimes there's some spikes that lead the total to be really large, but they're actually not sustained over a period of time. So again, this is just a really quick way, an example of how you can put together a report really fast with any of the data we have access to in your data using Studio. So we talked about creating these reports. One of the things that we also heard from a lot of customers is they had a hard time sharing reports. Right? You usually put this in a PowerPoint and you email it around, and then somebody adds something to it, and so you start adding versions, and then you have a whole thread of a bunch of different versions of attachments. It's pretty amazing how much work is just around managing these things. And so we looked at Google of how do we make sharing easy, and we just saw that Google Drive was actually a really easy mechanism. So we completely integrate with Google Drive. I can make this report completely public, so anybody who has access to this can view it, or I could turn it off if I want to keep it private. One of the things I want to do is, so Mary, if you can help me here, let's say I wanted to add Mary to have access to this. So it's M. Andrews, I think, right?
Yep, that's it.
At Cardinal Path.
You got it.
Does that look right? So I'm going to give Mary access here to edit this. And I'll go ahead and, yep, it picked it up. So I went and sent it to her, an invitation. So what she should get is an email inviting her to come into this report that I just shared access with her. And so you must have seen it because I see you here now in the report. And one of the other things that we've integrated with our G Suite and Google Drive is the ability to collaborate in real time. So Mary, if you can go into the edit mode, which I gave you access to, and if you can click on one of the charts, what I could see is Mary here is in the chart as well. So maybe we can change some of the colors and look and feels. Maybe we can use green. And so what you can see here is Mary can go ahead and update the colors up at the top in the chart, and I could actually go ahead and update the colors on mine down below. And what we've integrated here is this concept of real-time collaboration. And so where this becomes really powerful is what we see is people creating reports, sharing the reports with executives, and executives start saying, well, what if we could change X or Y and Z? Instead of going back and taking a whole bunch of time to go through that whole workflow that we talked about earlier, you can actually go into edit mode, change it in real time, and everybody who has access to the report can see the updated information. So it dramatically saves a significant amount of time to reflect what you actually want to see. And it becomes really powerful when somebody asks you for some new information, and instantly you can give it to them without having to go offline, pull the information, and then rejoin in the conversation.
Yeah,
So,
Nick, I love this feature. We work in really distributed teams, and same with our clients. They're often really distributed, and so being able to really work in real time with them as you talk things through is really helpful and valuable.
yeah, absolutely. It's kind of interesting because when you think of dashboarding, you think of, okay, well, this is a way to just report on my data. But in many ways, what the dashboard is the way we view it is really a communication channel. It's a way to communicate your data to other people, right? And the ability to have flexibility, the flexibility over how you communicate is what differentiates effective communication versus non-effective communication, right? In some ways, you could think of, why do we have salespeople, right? It's to help other people make a decision on what to buy, right? And that requires tailoring information to the audience. And that's really what a tool like Data Studio starts enabling you to do. And as people start giving you feedback around the dialogue you're having around the information, being able to react in real time to update and reflect what they're interested in becomes really powerful. Great, so that's a quick overview of Data Studio. There's a ton of features. We can do a more advanced demo in the future, but for there, why don't we leave it at that? And let's go back into the slides, if possible. Thanks. So a couple of key benefits of the product. As I mentioned, being able to streamline communication with stakeholders, it seems like a small thing, but it's actually really important. When you have a big presentation, you really want to focus on getting people to take action, make decisions. When you look at how data is presented in the current products, it's one size fits all. And so it's really difficult to actually get people to look at the exact thing you want them to focus on. With a product like Data Studio, you can really tailor the conversation around getting the other party to take action to make improvements, and we see that as a huge benefit. We're seeing a lot of people saving time, a huge amount of automation happening where instead of doing a bunch of manual reports, they can use a product like Data Studio to be a lot more productive. Some of the companies we've worked with in the past, they'll have a central team that, specifically like around a publisher where they have the news floor. A lot of the editors want to see the performance of the articles that they're writing. Well, what they'll traditionally do is they'll go to their analytics team and ask them to build reports. So this analytics team is not really doing analytics or analysis. They're actually doing a bunch of reports that are being asked. And so we're seeing the ability to actually give that task of reporting back to editors using a tool like Studio because it's so easy to use, enables them to self-serve as well as allowing that team to not just be, as sometimes we call like reporting monkeys, but really focus on the more important things that they're getting paid to do. Clearly, empowering more people in the organization with data allows them to make better decisions. Again, if as more users come online and start interacting in the digital world, the amount of data that's being collected explodes. The challenge is, how do you manage that data? And if you have one team that's the owner of all the data of your organization, it's going to be challenging for other people who don't have resources within that team to actually use that data to make decisions. And with this tool like Data Studio, the ability to democratize data, make it accessible, allows many more people to help drive those decisions on a day-to-day basis. And finally, if you need another reason to why to use the product, we made it completely free. There is no paid version right now, so you can definitely save money on your bottom line, especially if you're an agency and you're paying for other products. Definitely give Data Studio a try, because it could affect your bottom line. So a lot of benefits for the product. Go to the next slide. Again, we're actually adding, we have a whole bunch of different reporting connectors today. As I mentioned, we have the ability to import files. We're working on a bunch of our Google products. We're actually working on adding a whole bunch of more connectors. There's some really exciting things that we're looking at of kind of rethinking the space around how we can add many connectors to many different products in a Google fashion, something unique and exciting. So stay tuned for that. But the long-term story is, we realize that data is not just in analytics. It's not just at Google. It's in many different locations. So we built the product to be as data agnostic as possible, and we'll be adding many, many more sources to allow you to make it easy to access your data through the product. And finally, kind of the last piece here is this really simple sharing. There's some really interesting things because we leverage Google Drive, where you can share with anybody who has an email address, but you can also share with Google Groups. So it's a great way to manage different sets of users. You also have all the organization capabilities of Google Drive. So what we've seen some more sophisticated people, what they'll do is they'll have a folder in Google Drive for their customer. They'll add a bunch of different reports. They'll add a Google group to have access to the folder, and then they'll manage access to all the different reports through that Google group, which then in turn gives all those users access to all the different reports in a file. So there's a lot of really powerful organization capabilities that we're leveraging by integrating with Google Drive. And then the ability to actually not have to have versions where you're sending and updating. You can just have one object that you're always updating, that's always the latest status, that evolves over time to be more and more accurate. We have a bunch of dashboards that we create for our product, for Data Studio, to look at performance. And it's interesting that over time, it grows, it changes, we add better metrics as we collect better data. And so it evolves into something where we have many people looking at it, and we have more and more trust in the data, and more facets of the business that we're able to measure, because it's this kind of live, ongoing experience. And then finally, the last part is the collaboration with other users in real time. You see it as really a unique aspect of and really interesting technology we can leverage, but then making it a lot easier, to keep things in sync, work with other people, leverage the experience of others to build out these experiences.
Cool. Thanks, Nick. So Data Studio, again, can't say enough about my love of the tool, and because it satisfies the anatomy of a successful dashboard as we've outlined here. So piggybacking off of everything you were just saying, Nick, meaningful metrics, giving users control, having them be able to interact. I think that's key. That's one of the things with Data Studio, as we saw in the demo. It just, once you get people interacting with the tool, looking at data, get their hands in the data, it's going to really increase your adoption. There's nothing worse than, as analysts, when we spend a lot of time creating reports that do languish in someone's inbox, whereas with Data Studio we see, quite frankly, the opposite. As we are creating these types of visually beautiful, meaningful dashboards and socializing them within our organizations, that the adoption increases, and we're delving deeper and deeper as Google also makes more connections available as well. And the time efficiency, again, can't be beat. Nothing worse than a lot of by-hand data culling and data manipulation. And then, again, those connectors with things like BigQuery, where we can create whatever reporting tables we need in connect right with Data Studio, it's a beautiful thing. So in all these ways, it's a fabulous dashboarding tool and one we really believe in. Of course, going beyond the dashboard, we touched on this throughout the presentation, but dashboarding is a super tool to be able to monitor your metrics and keep your finger on the pulse. I often like to call them like pulse reports, so you know what's happening, especially in the digital space, because it's evolving, it's happening so quickly. But keying off those insights and analysis opportunities, dashboards are great for that, and potentially not the best for doing real-time analysis, of course, because creating dashboards on the fly for analysis is a little bit deep. I mean, I could see a potential use case for that, but usually dashboards are great to set up, make sure you have your back end turning away, plugging in that data in a consistent way, elevating those metrics to your whole team, and then pulling in those analysis opportunities as the outcome. And that way you can drive data towards true insights and, again, continue to engage and optimize your marketing efforts across your brands and across your organization. So at this time, I guess we'll pause. Dave, I'll hand it back to you if you want to add in any questions.
Yeah, that was fabulous. Thanks a lot, Mary and Nick. Definitely, that was a great session. We've got a number of questions that came in, so let me dive right into them. Let's see here. We've got, so Nick, you talked about there's a 2 gigabyte limit of file upload space. Is that related to your Google Drive space limit? So potentially folks could expand that limit if they have a larger space in their Google Drive?
Yeah, that's a great question. So right now, actually, we store all the data in Google Cloud Storage. Part of that is that you have a little bit more flexibility around how you manage the data. It's a little bit more data-centric. Right now, we have a free version for 2 gigs today, and clearly if you want to, and you don't have to sign up for anything. You just drag and drop a file into your browser, we upload it, you can start analyzing. If you wanted to have more storage, you can clearly pay for Google Cloud Storage, and then you can import huge amounts of data. And then, that's one of the, I think, unique aspects about the product is that because we integrate closely with their cloud infrastructure, we can actually scale to really large amounts of data sets. So if you have terabytes of data, you can import it, and then we have ways that you can then query that directly within Studio as well. So we're really seeing cloud as the ability or Google Cloud to scale processing for your large data sets. And there's a whole, model where you can pay for more storage processing for that as well.
Awesome. Another one here, I think this is you as well, Nick. How does security and permissioning work? Is it a live connection, or is there an optimized sort of data extract happening under the hood that's on Google infrastructure?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think, security is, it's a tricky question because you have so many gradients of security. At one end, you have people emailing documents around to other users where you have zero control over, once it's emailed out, how it gets forwarded. On the other side, everything's very restricted, and you have to have full access to the underlying data in order to view anything, right? And so with Studio, we try to support all the gradients. And so at the most restrictive level, all the users have to have access to the underlying data in order to be able to view any of that data through Data Studio. But we've also made it very accessible too for non-sensitive data. So you can actually take a report and make it public, and then anybody on the internet can actually view that data and be able to work with it. And so we provide all those controls within the product on how you can customize access to data. I mean, I think at the end of the day, there is some implicit trust of who are you giving access to data. And we've also found some really interesting, insights about how other people think of working with data, where, one of the really nice parts about Studio and analytics is that when we talk to people using Google Analytics, they find it challenging to share Google Analytics with other people in the organization because there's just so much data, and a lot of people start asking questions, and that team doesn't have enough time to answer all those questions. And so what they end up doing is just not sharing the data. With Studio, you can actually create a report and then give only view access to that report, and any viewer can only see the data that's been in their report. And we're seeing that really helping out these companies curate an experience of only the data that they want to show, and then just allowing only the people or the audience to just see that subset of data in a very easy to configure way. So definitely a lot of ways you can configure sharing, and we're seeing a lot of interesting, powerful applications of it.
Yeah, we really like that last bit there where we can create a dashboard with all kinds of different pieces of data, but the users can view the dashboard but don't need or have access to the underlying sources of data, whether that's Google Analytics or BigQuery or Google Sheets or anything else, which is really great. Mary, I think this one's probably for you. You work across a variety of different tools. Does Data Studio replace Tableau?
That's a question we get quite often. I think they both have strengths, and they are very different in terms of their strengths. Whereas Tableau, on the fly, you could be merging and transforming your data. Now, with that great power also comes great responsibility, where I've seen actually the generation of incorrect reports because metrics weren't merged, or you can really kind of screw things up if you don't know what you're doing in a very deep way with Tableau. So Tableau in itself, it has a lot of those deeper transformative capabilities on the data side. And that, again, to me, is what delineates it from something like Data Studio, which to me sits on top of the data structure. So you're not going to be transforming your data in real time in Data Studio. Instead, you would potentially, again, in my case, I've used BigQuery to do that, to create my reporting tables, merge data sets that I need to pull together, and then from the reporting table connect to Data Studio. So all of that transformation, data merges, everything is happening separate from the visualization tool. And to me, that creates a very nice, clean line. So not saying that, again, I'm kind of favoring Data Studio in this scenario, but I do find that actually prevents users from making data manipulation and errors with their insights that they find through the dashboards, because you're kind of keeping them only to the metrics that matter that they should see in their reporting tables, rather than with Tableau where you're opening up all of that to the end user, and in a lot of cases things can get a little screwy.
Yeah, and so I guess it sort of is dependent on the use case, where Data Studio could potentially replace Tableau in many cases, and there's other cases where you might want to leverage one or the other specifically. But sounds like from what you're saying, Tableau is a bit more of a, because of some of those deeper aspects that it can go into, it's a more complex tool, which also requires a little more experience and training to use.
Agree 100%.
Awesome. Just a few more here. Appreciate it, guys. So Nick, we had this one before. So if you're, and I'm going to pass it to you, but if you can't answer it, I think I have sort of the answer that we've had from Google in the past. But this is one that comes up pretty regularly for us, and I haven't had it specifically on Data Studio. But are there plans to make Data Studio HIPAA compliant for customers in the healthcare and health insurance spaces?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think in the long term, the answer is yes, we do want to do that. There's HIPAA compliance on the healthcare space, and then there's there's a bunch of SEC stuff for finance as well. However, getting those, like when we look at prioritization, there's a bunch of capabilities we want to add to the product. There's a bunch of SLAs and things we want to add as well. So we see those as being farther out of enabling those, probably not in the short term. I think the broader story is, we do see HIPAA compliant solutions around G Suite and Google Cloud and other solutions around there. And as we bring Data Studio closer to those other suites and solutions, we definitely want to find a way to make it HIPAA compliant. But I wouldn't wait for it in the short term. It'll probably take some time for us to get there.
Awesome. This is another one we get quite often. Are there plans for a feature that supports print or save as PDF? Often we find that execs and management prefer to receive something where that's sort of printed out for them on their desk or as a PDF, and they don't want to have to navigate into some website. Is there any plans for that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we hear a lot of that. Actually, it kind of brings up an interesting question. For all these feature requests, we have a new system. If you go to our help center, look at feature requests, there's a new system where you can rate and vote to help us prioritize the features, and then you can add new features as well. This is actually the #1 feature request that we're seeing on that tool. So definitely something that we want to build. We're trying to better understand the different use cases of what people want or what they're trying to do. We hear PDF is the ask, but then when we start looking at like what are the actual things people are trying to do, it's more around how do you do more of a push communication, allowing people to consume information without logging in anywhere. Things that we've looked at is like maybe we can just put the report directly in the email, so your email is the client. You don't have to actually have a PDF viewer. So there's a bunch of different things that we're exploring. So yes, it's on the roadmap. I'd love to do it this year if we can. And if you have more use cases, definitely take a look at that resource that we have for submitting more of these feature requests so we can get more of your use cases to make sure we're building the right thing.
Awesome, thanks. You heard it here first, folks. Just a couple more questions. One thing you did mention there, the support center, and it's something we didn't really call out in the presentation, but for those of you interested in giving Data Studio a try, and maybe you want a little more intro to the product, Nick and the team have developed some great getting started videos that can be accessed right from in the Data Studio support pages. So definitely check those out if you're looking to get things started there. So just one last question here, and I think we're sort of coming to the end. We'll have to wrap it up. But we had different but similar questions here around, is it possible, you didn't show this in the demo, but is it possible to bring multiple data sources in at the same time, or link, such as multiple different Google Sheets or multiple Google Analytics views?
Yeah, it's a great question. There's kind of two answers to that. The first one is yes. In a given report, you can bring in different, any of the different data to bring in together. What we see a lot of people doing is bringing in different like AdWords, Search Console, Google Analytics data to really get a better understanding of the performance of their website and the traffic to it. And then you can, coordinate and put the right date range across the whole thing. So that's possible. One of the other things that we're looking at is we hear a lot of people asking to be able to take two different types of data and put them in the same chart. That's currently not available, but again, it's something that we're looking to build and something to add to the product. So definitely we see working with data is one of the key aspects of the product, making it easy. So we'll continue to invest in that area to allow you to merge and bring together many different data sources within the product.
Awesome. Well, guys, I think that's all we have time for today. And, I think as you've seen today, a free tool from Google, Data Studio, is quite powerful. It's a big advance from what we previously had available in tools such as Google Analytics. So, you and the team have done an awesome job, Nick. So for those of you attending today, if we didn't get to your question, don't worry. We will follow up with you directly to ensure you get an answer. And really hope this session gave you some good insight into Google Data Studio and some ideas as to how you might introduce or grow the use of dashboards and reporting within your organization. We have a broad range of ways to help you ensure success beyond just choosing the right tool, and we're going to send some materials out after the webinar here, including a Data Studio step-by-step guide to help you on your way. In addition, we will send the recording to this webinar, and you're welcome to share this with your colleagues. Big thanks to Mary and Nick for the great presentation and demo. I know our teams are passionate about data visualization, and we try to continue to innovate and build upon the capabilities within Data Studio. So it was great to hear you drill down into the benefits and features today. As always, please don't hesitate to reach out to us at Cardinal Path for more info, and thanks everyone for joining us. And Nick and Mary, thank you very much for your time today.
Great, thanks. Thanks for having us.
Dave.
Awesome. I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks again.